In terms of announcements, so Ipso, you probably have a couple things. Jennifer, is there anything you want to, or Kenzie, you're going to do it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it. So just a reminder, our waffle fest is tomorrow from 8:30 until 12 in the grad lab. And there will be gluten-free waffles as well. It'll be super fun and delicious.
Come get waffles, 8:30 to 12, you said, tomorrow. It's a great tradition that we're restarting now that we're back in person on campus. So yeah, we'd love to see you there. Any other announcements for any coming up? So for those of you enrolled in seminar for credit, there's the assignment to attend a thesis or project proposal or defense. There is one Friday. I've heard, I don't know details about one a week from Friday, but there might be one a week from Friday, but there definitely is one this Friday at 3 p.m. in the conference room. Even though the Canvas course says everything is due tomorrow, you can, there won't be any penalty if you do the one this Friday, or if there is one next Friday, like you'll be fine, right? Just get it turned in and don't worry about it being marked late. We know how to work with Canvas and we'll make sure it's all okay for you. Really grateful for your contributions to seminar this semester. Looking forward to our presenters today. So Steve Behunin and some guests that he will introduce. We're grateful to have them. And if you'll join me in welcoming them to seminar, we'll turn the time over.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I do hope it's an experience where we can be learning together. I represent Magnify Ed Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And David Aberhart is, come stand with me, David.
Take off some pressure.
Yeah. Does anyone recognize him? Does anybody know who he is? Okay. You know then that David Aberhart is the coach of Cosmo. Okay. And Cosmo,
Coach, right?
yeah. And Cosmo is the leading mascot in the United States. And since there aren't many of them around the world, he also leads the world. And David works with and competes with 200 other university coaches in the United States, all the major leading universities in the United States. And the program that we're wanting to talk with you about, the course that we want to introduce to you is a course that David, as the coach of Cosmo, Cosmo does an outreach throughout this county and beyond, working with all of the K through 6 schools. And when they see what Cosmo can do, they are wowed. Everybody remembers it. But what David has wanted to do is have a memory that is more
lasting. So we're
why don't you just
Okay.
introduce
So
what you normally do?
okay. So we visit schools every week that we're in school. So fall and winter semesters.
And when you're ready, signal.
Okay.
Signal.
Great. It's a community outreach program. So it's not just BYU. We're not just trying to brand our athletic department or our school. We're actually trying to help kids. We're trying to excite them and get them excited about learning and education, but also about being what we call Cougar built. And that Cougar built is being mentally strong, physically strong, socially strong, and technologically strong. There's a lot of things that attack these kids, and we're trying to give them the start of those tools. But with the advent of Magnify Ed and the ReadMate program, there are a lot of tools that it's not just going to be a show up and say, hey, be Cougar built. This is a program that's going to change and revolutionize the way that they are able to get information, retain information, the way that they learn, the way that they connect with their teachers, the way that they connect with their study materials and everything else. And it's not just for kids. I mean, I'm sure Steve eventually will get into this. This is for anybody that's learning, which in sense is all of us. And it's a program that's super exciting because the more you understand how the brain functions and learns, there are some simple tools that you already have that you're not using. And if you learn how to use them, you'll retain so much more information. You'll get it in so much faster and you'll just remember it. And it's just, it becomes more of an experience. It's experiential learning. And it's exciting. So it's a great program. And that's currently what I'm doing in the community, largely in the community, but we're also creating videos and stuff like that so that we can go and present it to other schools so that they can have that program. And so also that people can watch it online and go to YouTube or go wherever we're going to put it on video and that kind of stuff. And so that they can have it, show it to their kids. And then we even send them tools via the internet or on their phones and tablets or whatever technology that they would. So that's kind of a piece of what I'm doing. The point at you. We'll see if he can hear. I don't know if he can hear you.
You open that door. This is the one and the only Cosmo. There's only ever been one.
Here, that's right. Come on, stand up. Thanks, Cosmo.
Thank you, Cosmo. He and I have good conversations together.
Yes, he's a good listener. All right, well,
Thank you.
you don't mind hoofing at home, do you? Sorry, I can give you my keys, but.
We'll just tell you about the course that our foundation, Magnify Ed Foundation, wants to develop. It's tentatively called, titled Biographical History of STEAM. Anybody know what STEAM is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This course is designed as a general ed course, 3 credits, and it's designed without any prerequisites so that anyone can take the course. And what it does, it will cover the 4 aspects of STEAM, which are what? Science, technology, engineering, arts, and it's arts instead of STEM. Arts makes it STEAM instead of STEM, right? And so we're introducing the pioneers of STEAM via their biographies. Okay, the 5 areas of them. And the purpose of that is because what we find is that especially STEM people or STEAM people tend to be people who struggle with reading skills. Does that sound like anything? What does when you've got a chemistry person or a physics person or so forth, they must be less intelligent, right? No, and that's really important because education needs to understand that just because we read slowly or read with we struggle with comprehension, it has nothing or very little to do with our intellect, because God don't make no dummies. Okay, but there are things that this course covers, not only the content of the biographies, but we also cover how to overcome those skills. Most of our students are able to improve their reading comprehension, reading rate, and attention levels by about 300%. And so it's coming into a course. And what we would like to be able to do is have those of you who are interested in research and the statistics of education to help us with the development of surveys that students take in the first iteration to the second iteration, to the third and the fourth, so that we can produce in a rather short period of time a course that's going to be ready for next fall for submission for credit. Okay, credit courses are submitted, as you probably know, the 1st of October. And so working with continuing education. By the way, I'm dyslexic. And so I understand all about these problems. I have a problem in that my dyslexia comes out that I have pictures and I have a hard time putting the label to that picture. So I tend to hem and haw a lot. At any rate, what we intend to do is create an online course that can fit the needs of the students of a university. In the past, this course, Student Development 305, was a course that was very popular. At one time, they allowed for 11 sections to be taught, 30 students per section, and they had waitlisted, all of those sections were waitlisted for 2 to 3 semesters out. So what does that say? There was a need, there was a demand for 1,000 students a semester to take the course. But it was hurting, it was a strain on the university for classroom, okay? and teacher time. So this course that we're talking about is online, and we expect it to be a course that is an award-winning course, where in addition to using hopefully your skills and student development, community continuing education skills, we're also planning on using Allen Communications. Does anybody know Allen Communications? Yeah. Do you know where they rank in the world with regard to online instruction? Number 1. They're up in Salt Lake City, and by far they're the best. And so we want to have this course be an award-winning course, and we hope that you all will help in the development of that, especially with the statistics of it, which means the redoing of each iteration. We hope, because it's online, we can get through 4 classes during the summer months. Okay. Now, in conjunction with this, we all know that one of the best ways to learn is by writing, right? But there is no doubt about the fact that writing is very, very expensive, right?
Grade to look at,
The
and
man
then,
hours.
and then how good is the writing and how good is, you know, the production of it?
Yes,
The English
it's very expensive, right? And so we don't do much of it. Not like we could. Well, Reed is with, where is Reed? Oh, here's Reed. Here's Reed Martin. And Reed is outside of Toronto, Canada. Reed is with a company called Critique or Critic. Critic has been in operation for 2 years. And in those 3 years, one of the people who latched onto it and adopted it very quickly was a fellow by the name of Scott Johnson. Scott earned a master's in chemistry from here at BYU, left and went to MIT and got a PhD, and then worked with Georgia Pacific in adhesives for nearly 20 years. He retired because he was tired of writing papers. And he is now with BYU Idaho. And he teaches chemistry there, and he teaches a chemistry writing class. And Critique has a peer review and a flipped classroom platform that allows him to do things that he could never have done before. He says that halfway through the semester, the students get it. And then they just love it. And I think that this is something that we want to put into our course. And I think you'll want to know about it because I think it can have tremendous benefits to any course that has any writing to it. And then of course it teaches flipped classroom. Everybody knows what flipped classroom is, right? Yeah. Okay, Reed. You're on.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I guess I'll share my screen here. Yeah, so Critic at its heart is a peer assessment tool and helps you administer peer assessment within the classroom. But really the approach we take at it is actually incentivizing students to be accurate and critical of each other so they can learn by teaching and really engage with the course concepts in a new way. So I just showed this slide first. I'm sure you're all familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, but just applying those top 3 layers of create, evaluate, and analyze is really what we're trying to push students to do more, as it really enhances their learning, making them think a lot more critically and learn by teaching each other. So here's just a couple points about why peer assessment has proven to be effective at sort of incentivizing students to apply those higher order thinking skills. And so, yeah, we believe that peer assessment is an integral part of every classroom, flipping the classroom, getting students to evaluate each other's work. And so I'd like to show you our approach at that. So here is how Critic looks like when you log in as a student. If you have multiple courses, there would be multiple cards here. So I'll just take you through our demo course. There's a summary at the top in terms of your overall grades in that course, just so students can easily sort of see how they're tracking, as well as spotlighted content that the professor has highlighted, showing great examples of feedback or assignment submissions. So the way it works is there's 3 phases. So the first is create, which is basically just the regular assignment phase where students are given their expectations as well as a rubric so they know how they'll be graded, and they can submit their creation here, which they can submit just through this text box or by attaching a file. Most file formats are supported. And so that's pretty standard. That's generally how work is done in the classroom in the first place. So the next 2 phases is where the actual peer assessment comes in. So if we go into the evaluate phase of an assignment, this is where after the create phase is over, students will receive 3 of their peers' work anonymously to evaluate, as well as they'll have the rubric right there to guide them in terms of how to grade each other. And basically they read through each other's work, you give scores, and it's out of stars. The star amounts can be set to any amount. And then there's a written evaluation basically explaining why those scores were given, giving feedback on areas of improvement, as well as positive feedback on areas that were done well. And the final stage to close the feedback loop is actually where students see the feedback they've received, the evaluations they've received from other students, all anonymous as well. And they can actually give a rating and give feedback in terms of how motivational and how critical that evaluation was. So if someone gives an example like,
Can I interrupt you?
yeah, of course.
The evaluation, the comments that come in from the evaluators of the assignment. Dr. Scott Johnson, says that his students find that to be the most valuable part of this, and because of that, he is awarding points to the students for every comment that the author accepts as valuable. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I did brush over the evaluate phase a little too quickly. Yeah, because this is really where they get into the sort of meat and potatoes of learning from each other and learning by teaching. It forces them to take another look at the material, as well as be critical and sort of learn by teaching. And yeah, so it's sort of in terms of evaluating someone else, you get to take a new look at the material and engage in it in a different way. And that's been really helpful for engaging students as well as improving their learning experience. Yeah, so we'll go back to the feedback phase. So basically, they get 3 feedbacks from the 3 evaluations that were done of them, and they evaluate it. So the feedback on feedback here is how we're closing the loop and making sure students are incentivized to be accurate and critical of each other and actually improve throughout the semester in terms of how they give feedback. And that just ensures that they get out of it what we're intending for them to get out of it. So here, this model student here has accepted this feedback as motivational and good critique. And I think here, yeah, here's an example of some pretty common feedback we see from students before they get into using Critic, which is pretty much just a pat on the back and doesn't really help much in terms of how can they improve for their next project, next assignment. So based on the 2 criteria here, it was very motivational, but it was unhelpful. I actually would myself put this as ineffective, because they literally said there's no feedback to provide. So it's an extreme example, but it is similar to the feedback a lot of students give. So the feedback on that evaluation would be low, and you can see that their grading power is low as well. So I guess, yeah, before I get into grading power, I'll take the questions in the chat now. So yeah, I see, yes, it can be embedded into Canvas. We integrate with Canvas. So basically, like the actual assignment, you wouldn't embed into Canvas, but any assignments from Canvas, we can populate over into Critic sort of on the back end. And as well, the grades that students receive and give each other will be automatically transferred between the 2. So yeah, it integrates, but it's a separate website, if that clarifies things. And yeah, what features that make it unique? I would say 1, closing the feedback loop, and actually making sure students are getting feedback on their feedback. And the main difference, I would say, are these grading powers, which are calibrated at the beginning of the term, which I'll get into in just a second here. Instructs users on how to provide better feedback. So yeah, basically that's what the closing the feedback loop is. We actually have students give each other feedback on their evaluations, and basically, like, they in a normal class, you'd require a comment here, and they'd sort of leave their review on the feedback and a comment on in terms of how they could improve. Like they could be more explicit, they could be more encouraging, they could be more timely, like they could have done the feedback earlier. Those are all criterion for the feedback. But yeah, I only have a few more minutes here before I gotta hop off. So we should go through the grading power and calibration real quick. Essentially, so students have this grading power attached to them, which is between 1 and 6 stars. And what that does is actually their feedback has been determined to be more valuable. So it weights their feedback more than other students who say have like 1 or 2 stars. So in terms of the actual grades they've given in the evaluate phase, like these points, there's actually a weighted average calculation that's done in the back to ensure accurate grades are actually given to students. And how that grading power is assigned is basically at the start of the term, you do a calibration activity where it's just one of these activities like I've taken you through with the 3 phases, but the professor themselves actually grades as well. And the students whose grading is most similar to that of the professors, they get 6 stars, and the students whose grading is most different from that of the professors on the 3 evaluations they did, they'll get 1 star. And basically that can be, those grading powers reflect basically how accurate of a grader they are. And they'll change over the term based on the feedback process, and getting good reviews here, very motivational, great critiques, they can improve their grading power over the term. And that just results in, we usually only see about 3 to 4% of students in each activity actually disputing their grade with the grade they've received after the weighted average. So most professors, that's the critical feature for them, as there's a lot less involvement in terms of managing like whose feedback was accurate, actually having to manually review all these different peer assessments. Most students actually accept their grade as accurate, and so there's only about 3 to 4% that you have to go in and manually review, which of course you can do for all of them, but it just frees up some time for admin tasks, mentoring students, research and whatnot.
And Reed, I know you have to jump. I'm here now just to support. I don't know like how our timing is, or if there's kind of a cutoff for the critic presentation, but I'm more than happy to kind of field any other questions about our platform. But maybe if someone could just let me know if there's other things to be discussed during this session.
Hi, John.
Okay, Stephen. I recognize that voice.
We had a couple questions coming through the chat. Can you see them?
Yes. So how does it help resources if the professor also grades the work? So if I understand the question correctly, I think we're saying like, how is it saving instructors time if they're also grading all of the assignments? And so if I'm understanding that right, what I would say is we're not meant to replace instructors or TAs, but more meant to kind of streamline that process for them and allow them to focus more on coaching and mentoring as opposed to just grading. And so for these types of assignments, they're typically lower stakes. So we're not talking about like a final exam being administered on Critic. We're talking about biweekly activities that are worth maybe 10% of the students' grades total. And that's why, especially for larger enrollment courses, we're not necessarily seeing the instructor actually go in and grade every single assignment. They might do some spot checks. They might actually review any of the students who disputed their scores. But because we have the calibration and grading powers in place, a lot of times we're finding that the grades the students are getting are actually pretty closely in line with how an instructor would grade. We actually have a research paper, one of our first ones being published soon, where an instructor administered assignments to her students and then also to a professional level grader. And she found that there was never more than a 5% difference between the way that the grades were allocated in Critic and how an instructor graded. So hopefully that answers.
Can I answer to that too?
Please.
Dr. Johnson says that in the beginning, he realizes that there is a learning curve to this. And so it's really about halfway through the semester when the students get the picture. It takes a period of time. But when that happens, when a student has been through the course and gets the picture, then the amount of time that the instructor has to do grading is tremendously reduced. Okay. So in the beginning, he would do multiple examples of his own correction that would be available for everyone to view and to compare their own to. He's showing the example, and then thereafter, this is his third semester. He says, and he's getting better and better at teaching it up front. So students are spending less and less time being frustrated. And so he's finding that he's spending less and less time, but getting better and better results through the semester.
I have a question about how in that program, the 3 peers are chosen. Is it a scaffolded type of a thing where you have a good reviewer, a medium reviewer, and a low reviewer, so they all can work together? And is that done behind the scenes or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure who asked it. I can't really see into the classroom, but yeah, good question. That is part of where the technology comes into play. So as much as we possibly can, we distribute the evaluators based on grading power. So you're not going to necessarily have one student's creation with 3 virtuoso, kind of the highest quality evaluators, and then one with all beginner evaluators. We try to distribute that as much as possible, and it changes each week, as does grading power. Students could improve their skills. They could actually potentially get kind of D-ranked one week, and before anything's distributed, the algorithm looks at everyone's grading power and distributes as much as we can. And to Stephen's point, this isn't just a 1 or 2 activity thing. We always recommend instructors administer between 5 and 10 throughout the term. And it's through that iterative process that students really understand sort of what it takes to become that virtuoso 6-star level evaluator. I saw there's a question on Ferpa compliance. So yeah, that's something that we obviously take very seriously. That's from Karina. So we are fully Ferpa compliant, and we've gone through some reviews, and both at BYU and with all of our institutions that we work with. One aspect of that, just at a high level, is everything's anonymous to the students. So they don't know who they're evaluating or who's evaluating them. The other point is that instructors still have the final say. So they're the ones who in the end click, yes, this is all accepted, or they can go in and resolve any dispute. So it's not necessarily in the final hands of the students. It's up to the instructor or the facilitator. And we also don't really collect much PII, like personally identifiable information. It's really just the email, which is actually connected to the school's LMS. And I could send some more resources on this for whoever's interested.
Other questions?
So I know anonymity tends, on the internet at least, tends to bring out sometimes the worst in people. Are you finding that the ranking system is what's kind of mediating that, or have you had any issues with that? Like people just giving bad evaluations just because?
Yeah, good question. I think that's, to your point, that's one of the challenges we're trying to solve with the grading power. So students know and are actually incentivized to put time and effort into the evaluations. They'll learn very quickly. If they don't, their grade is actually affected. And that's something that is a big eye opener to students who maybe in traditional assignments are used to being able to just say, you know, great job, dude, and that's it. And they would get a participation check mark. The other thing that we do have in place, you know, of course, sometimes you just can't avoid inappropriate comments or things from students, those kind of, you know, the rare cases where there's someone who just decides to not follow instructions or say something inappropriate. We have a way for the students who are receiving evaluations to actually flag those directly to the professor. So they can flag creations if they're evaluators. They can also flag evaluations if they were inappropriate or rude. And the instructor knows who everyone is. And so students know, although it's anonymous to each other, someone knows who they are. So they can't just say whatever they want.
Can you talk about flipped classroom?
So in what sense, Stephen?
How your platform functions to improve flipped classroom?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting. Critic was founded about 2 months before COVID. So interesting timing there for us as a company. But you know, we weren't started to be a fully online tool. We were started to facilitate engagement and collaboration for everything that's happening in between class sessions. So I think from a flipped classroom standpoint, it's really, you know, putting it in the hands of the students to do some work and preparation and ensure that they're coming to the actual class sessions and the lectures as prepared as possible. And that's exactly what Critic is meant for. So we do have some instructors who want to use us sort of in a synchronous way where they're administering these activities in a session. We don't recommend that for right now. Like that, our kind of bread and butter and where we've seen the most success is how are you tracking engagement and ensuring preparedness all the times that you don't have your eyes on students, whether that is through a camera like this or now in class as well.
Questions? Two questions.
Go first, Charles. Okay, I was just going to say, I really like the idea of evaluation. I mean, evaluation is a learning task, right? So students that learn to evaluate, that's actually an important part of their learning. So I really value that. I guess part of me is just wondering about the logistics because when you think about learning activities, like doing a good evaluation is time consuming. It takes a lot of time. And so if we're asking students to not only create artifacts, but then do a really good job of evaluating 3 peers artifacts, I can see the value in learning. I can see the value to learning there, but it seems like you might also have to adjust how many artifacts you actually have them create, because now they're spending a good portion of their time, if they're doing it correctly, evaluating. So
yep, that's a great point and something that we hear a lot. So I think it is very case by case. And so there are sometimes instructors who create these very light activities that actually, you know, don't take too much time. And in that case, they can assign maybe 3 or 4 evaluations per activity, because in total, those might take the students, you know, 5 minutes. If it's a relatively simple rubric, and they have to go through and leave a comment. On the other end, though, to your point, I think it was Charles maybe who asked the question. We also see instructors who are having students submit like a draft of an essay. And in that case, you're not going to have them evaluate for their peers. That would be way too much, but you might have them do 2 of their peers. And I think you sort of mentioned this, but the key to me in all of that is the rubric. So if there is a rubric that is well designed, that students understand what the criteria are, what the levels are, how to navigate through, how do I approach whoever's assignment that I'm evaluating, that sets them up for success right there. If they're just trying to kind of come up with something, by the seat of their pants, that's going to take a lot more time. And so I think at the top of the level, that's where instructors, have a lot of impact, is creating a really well-structured rubric. And, the instructors who've had the most success and the students who have enjoyed the platform the most are I think the ones that have the most robust rubrics set up for the activities. And the other thing is,
how many rubrics do you have in the library? That
I
have been
think
already produced.
I think we have like over 4,000 last time I checked. And so there's instructors who have kind of given us permission, because they've had so much success, to use their rubrics as templates. And so we do try to kind of set things up right at the start of creating a course, to ensure flexibility and customization. And also something to keep in mind is we do see these being run once every 2 weeks, or maybe once a week max. And if they're submitting something and only evaluating a handful, we do see that that's a pretty reasonable sort of time frame. Also considering obviously that they have other courses and a lot of other work and responsibilities. And I think to your point, hopefully by the end of the term, they don't see this as extra work, but they see it as a process that's actually helping them develop skills, become better critical thinkers, and retain knowledge at a deeper level, because it's not through memorization. Like what have you really learned unless you can teach it to the person next to you? That's our part at the core of our values.
So my question kind of similarly talks about the value that comes from the students doing the evaluations for each other. And I like how Critic is collecting this data about like who is evaluating well, who doesn't evaluate quite as well. Have you thought about exporting that data as almost like a badge of honor that like could be something meaningful to go on my resume, that I am an expert reviewer in this content area? Because it seems like that could be another way of motivating students to do that work, is that they get some kind of social credibility for being good at this kind of thing.
Muted. That's a great question. So I don't know if Reed went over this, but I wanted to share briefly something that we implemented pretty recently for that exact purpose, called spotlighting. Again, Reed may have mentioned this, but instructors that now have the ability to spotlight a specific creation, like an assignment, or actually spotlight an evaluation that they see as kind of the gold standard, and that gets released out to the rest of the class. It's all still anonymous, but whoever is the evaluator that had their content spotlighted will know, who they were. And that's like the short term, what we're doing now. Longer term, to your point, we're really trying to help students become more marketable and become more employable. And so this is like a longer term vision, but we see all this data we're collecting as almost like eventually a way to replace like your standard LinkedIn profile. Like, for example, like we got a lot of graduating students applying for roles. And if I see like some recommendation on their LinkedIn profile, as an employer, like I actually don't hold that much weight to that, because it could be like their best friend or something commenting on their LinkedIn. But if there is a way for a student to actually say, hey, listen, this is all of the courses I took using Critic, this is what objectively and anonymously my peers felt were my strengths. These were, the top 3 criteria that I succeeded in as an evaluator. Problem solving skills, leadership skills, things like that. That's something that I see as very powerful, and that's where we're hoping to get in, hopefully a not so distant future.
Yeah, I think that would be outstanding. I think that would really make students want to be good evaluators. So it helps grow what you're doing in Critic, because I think people will see that when I do this, I get something back. I get some social credibility in return. I'd encourage you, I love this idea as you think about it, to look at the verifiable credential standard from the W3C Foundation, because I think what you can do very easily here is when you're spotlighting evaluation and spotlighting creations, you can easily have instructors basically just verify people's abilities and just boom, package them as a verifiable credential that could then, like you said, almost replace some of the social profiles we have on LinkedIn and other things.
Yeah, definitely. I will check that out. Can you just repeat what that was, the verifiable credentials?
So there's kind of, and my apologies to the IPT community. They hear me talk about this all the time. There's kind of 2 main standards that you should look at, and they're kind of merging right now, actually. But one is the verifiable credential standard from the W3C group. And then the second one is the open badges standard, and that's from IMS Global. There are 2 different standards for packaging data into credentials that are basically signed tokens of what you've done, kind of thing. And those 2 credentials are starting to merge. So they're coming together, but so you could jump on either one of those bandwagons, but either one would be a good way to make this shareable so it exists outside of Critic.
Yeah.
But this is so much more than even a 6 option exam, right?
Yeah.
It's 6 option question exam, a whole new level.
Steve, you've got about 3 minutes. You want to kind of wrap things up and kind of.
One thing I'm not clear of is how we get back in touch with each other as to whether or not you would like to be part of the team that works on this course. Okay, good. That's great. The project will be well funded, and so we'll be competitive with, and possibly more competitive than other potential opportunities that are coming down your road. Okay.
Anybody have any questions as far as what do you think you're getting into? Yeah.
So I have a question. How does Magnify Ed and the STEAM biographies go in with this Critic thing? How are they matching in order to help? And I'm saying, you're thinking university students, but I teach elementary school, and I can see that there could be some benefit for my own students.
But what grade level?
I teach 6th grade right now.
6th grade? That's the year that we start. Okay. We teach a way of reading that's a multi-sensory way of reading. Okay. We teach students to use their finger to read with, their eyes, and their sense of hearing. Okay. And to coordinate that, it really requires at least a 6th grader. But the course is designed for them to be able to earn college credit beginning at that age, with the idea that they would be graduating from college with enough credits for an associate degree. So they would be entering college as a junior.
At minimum.
At minimum, yes. And when someone is able to read at college level, does anyone know what college level reading is defined as? It's basically 400 words per minute with 70 to 80% comprehension. Okay, there aren't many that are there. And in fact, U.S. Department of Education, NAEP, you all know what NAEP is, National Assessment of Educational Progress. They say that that is of a 12th grader, that is an advanced area, okay? And advanced, we graduate from in the United States, only 5 to 6% of high school seniors with advanced levels. So there's a huge need for what we're talking about, but it can begin in 6th grade.
So how-
have to end the conversation here. We're so grateful. Dave, Cosmo.
And increase.
Let's give them one round of applause. Good luck with the finals. Yeah, good luck with these.
Thank you. This is a seminar.